I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and tonight we're going to be talking about something super important. It's basic, but it's not the usual way that I talk about basic things. Tonight we're going to be talking about, am I in a toxic relationship with a hijackal? But I'm not going to be giving you the characteristics and traits of hijackals. I'm going to be talking to you about how it feels to be in a relationship with a hijackal. And that's a very important starting point, because going down the checklist, and I have several checklists you can take. Just go to toxicrelationshipchecklists.com with an S on the end, toxicrelationshipchecklist.com, and take them there. So that will give you the traits and patterns and cycles of hijackals. But tonight I want to talk about, are you in a relationship, a toxic relationship with a hijackal, and how it feels and what that does to you as a wonderful human endeavoring to be healthy? And those are important things to consider. And as usual, I invite you to support the Save Your Sanity podcast by going to patreon.com/Save Your Sanity. You can pledge $1, $5, $10, whatever you can, to make sure that this information keeps going out to people who really need it. Patreon.com/Save Your Sanity. So let's talk about a few of these things. Now, I created the term hijackal, and I did that because I've said this on other podcasts. Too many people, in my opinion, were going to the internet, putting in whatever traits that the person they had in mind had, and then they start mistaking the internet for a clinical mental health professional. So diagnoses come back, and the person who put in the search goes, oh, that person's a narcissist, a psychopath, a borderline, a sociopath, antisocial. That's not really very helpful. It may be good for a moment, but it doesn't help you with the feet on the ground what to do every day. So I wanted something that was not a mental health terminology. It talked about people who have a certain set of patterns, traits, cycles, and behaviors. And so I created the term hijackals. And if you haven't seen it before, my definition is hijackals. A hijackal is a person who hijacks a relationship for their own purposes, allaboutthem.com, and then relentlessly scavenges it for power, status, and control. And so it's important for us to understand if we are with a hijackal. Now, you might have just read that definition and go, yep, that's me. Well, that's a good start. So listen to some of the things that will validate and affirm what's going on for you tonight, because a person who you can recognize is all about power, status, and control, they make you feel a certain way or two. And it's important to be able to recognize it from the inside out too, rather than just looking at them from the outside in. So let's talk about this. What's different about a toxic relationship? Well, it's very important to have a healthy relationship in which, yeah, occasionally you have little toxic moments, you have a bad day, you're somebody's idea of a difficult person, and someone tells you you're difficult. The difference is you apologize and you change your behavior. In a toxic relationship, you tell the other person what you think, feel, need, or want, and they really don't care. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to have things their way. And that's what makes it toxic in part. And a whole lot of other things that we're going to talk about tonight too. So it's important to recognize that you might be in a toxic relationship. And so if that happens to be the case for you, you want to go over to toxicrelationshipchecklists.com and take the checklists, find out what's going on there, because you need to do that. And there you see, I spelled it incorrectly already. So let me fix that. It's toxicrelationshipchecklists.com. Very important spelling, plural, toxic relationship checklists.com. And let's move on. You can go there and you can take an in-depth checklist to find out if you are in a toxic relationship. Is your partner toxic? So very important. So let's talk about some of the attributes, how you will feel if you are in a relationship with a toxic person, with a hijackal. And some of the attributes of the relationship are that it feels, toxicity means that it actually feels poisonous. That, oh, every time I'm around this person or whenever they're in that way of being, I just feel badly. I feel disempowered. I feel, ugh, I don't want to be part of this. That's not fair. That's unjust. Don't I matter? And so it's like poison to your system that you may be a very giving person and they are takers. And they take and take and take and then make you wrong for not giving more. And that becomes a very poisonous cycle. Does that relate? Does that make you sit up and take notice and say, yes, it feels like I'm being poisoned? Well, that's what toxicity does. It makes you feel as though you've been poisoned, and it is a poisonous relationship. So that's very important to notice. And then the other thing is that it's pervasive, meaning these things keep spreading. Like, first of all, it's a little thing, it happens just once in a while. Then it starts to happen more frequently. Then you comment on it and you're told, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. If they even ever say they're sorry. And then after a little bit, you say that you don't care for that. And they say they don't care. It's your fault, right? You've had that happen. Hijackals are great at turning things into your fault. They love to find fault and they like to blame because, of course, there's nothing wrong with them. They are perfect. They are without fault at all. Everything is someone else's fault. So it becomes very pervasive. It spreads out and it gets into the crevices and corners of the relationship. It spreads to the children. It spreads to the in-laws. It spreads all over the place. And poison that is pervasive is extremely toxic, right? And so this can be happening in your relationship. It can be extremely toxic because it is poisoning the relationship, poisoning the system, causing it to malfunction, causing it to be unhealthy. And it keeps growing and getting worse and worse and worse and getting into more places. So it's pervasive. But another attribute of it is it's invasive, meaning that somehow it gradually makes its way. It makes its way into those places that I was mentioning, but it makes its way in there with harmful effects. Invasive is harmful. And when you begin to notice, in the beginning, most healthy people, they give people the benefit of the doubt. They give them a little wiggle room. They give them the opportunity to change their mind. They say, oh, maybe you're just having a bad day. But if you find yourself doing that over and over and over again, the likelihood is that they are not just having a bad day. And your justifications, your rationalizations for their behavior are actually enabling them to keep behaving badly. Because this behavior is invasive. It starts to get into the cracks and crevices of your soul. It gets into the little places in the relationship where there's no need for strife and struggle, but the power struggle makes those places contentious. And that's really difficult because the invasive nature, they start marginalizing you. They marginalize you from your family. They want to move you to some remote location where you know no one. And yeah, they have all kinds of ideas I'll get a better job. I'll buy a bigger house. There's lower tax rate. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And you think, well, am I being unreasonable? Why wouldn't I go? All those things sound good. And you may not realize that part of a hijackal's agenda is to isolate you, to marginalize you, to move you away from your family and friends so they have more control over you, so that they can be more invasive. And by being more invasive, they will be more pervasive because they will keep spreading. And then they do these really horrible things. They'll tell your family and friends or your coworkers or whatever, all kinds of nasty and negative things about you that are not true. Not true. However, they do it. And then people believe them. Why? Because they're charming, because they're convincing. They'll say things like, I don't like to talk about my partner, but we know that he or she is having these difficulties, and don't you worry, I've got it. I understand. I'll take care of it. It's my job. I'll take care of them. But they're declining, or they're missing the mark, or maybe they're going a little crazy, or maybe they really are falling apart, and they get this smear campaign going to get other people to think there's something wrong with you and that they are the ones that are right. Now, that's a big deal. If that kind of invasive action is being taken, you need to recognize that you are, in fact, in a toxic relationship, because that is very sad, but it does happen. So whether it's poisonous, pervasive, or invasive, these are things that you need to notice. And the upshot of all that is it's unpleasant. It is truly unpleasant to be around these people. And as a good person, you're probably giving them that wiggle room and making excuses for them. And you keep being hooked on hope that that person that you first met, the one who doesn't exist, sorry to say, the person who was everything you ever wanted, who seemed to read you like a book and know you so well, the person who gave you what you wanted, understood, got under your skin, allowed you to be vulnerable while they were collecting things to hit you over the head with later. That person that hooked you, that person that you fell in love with, doesn't exist. That was an act. And that's unpleasant to find out. It's unpleasant to come to terms with. It's unpleasant to believe because you've been duped, and you don't want to believe that you've been duped. You don't want to believe you were tricked or fooled. But hijackals do that. That's the kind of con person mentality that they have. I'll tell you whatever you want to hear, just come here, right? And so you find yourself in this place where everything feels a little unpleasant and you're on edge. And what's going to happen now? What can I count on? What can I not count on? What are they going to do or say that is unexpected and not in a good way? How are they going to tell me that I'm wrong? How many ways will they find to find fault with me? How many times will they have to win in the silliest, most trivial ways? Those are the things that cause toxicity, that you can never have things the way you'd like them to have because the hijackal always needs to have them the way they want them. And if you talk about equity, you're not going to find equity in a relationship. In episode 115, I talk about the 3 must-haves of a healthy adult relationship. You must listen to that one if you haven't already, because if you don't have those 3 must-haves, you have nothing to build a healthy relationship on. And if you have some of them or a little bit of them, then you have to find out what building can occur. What building will your partner join you in creating? What building will they do to change things in a way that is equitable and reciprocal and mutual? And if someone is willing to work on that and build on that, that's great. But when you're with a hijackal, they're not. They are not willing to do that. That is extremely unpleasant. So if you go to episode 115 and you really listen to those 3 things that are must-haves, and you realize that your partner has no interest in that, or your parent has no interest in that, or you have an adult child who has no interest in that, then you need to know that there's no building blocks there. And yes, you're going to grieve that, and it's sad. But you also have to recognize that you could stand on your head and spit wooden nickels for a decade, and it's not going to change much. Now, there are some ways that things can change, particularly, if you have an adult child who marries a hijackal. I work with many people around the world who are in that situation where they're hardly seeing their own child because the child married a hijackal. Then they hardly see their own grandchildren because of that same situation. There are things that we can do and we can try and we can put in place, but it's not a good idea to find ourselves in relationship with a hijackal and then think that we're going to bring about much change. We can bring about change in ourselves, which is very important, but we can't bring about much change in a true hijackal. Now, some people sit on the edge of being a hijackal. So when they're really under pressure, they have hijackal behaviors, but most of the time they don't. That's a different matter. But you'll find out when you take the test. When you go to toxicrelationshipchecklists.com, take the test, see what's so for you. Now, another thing about this is that they do things subtly. They do things behind the scenes. The toxicity is kind of rampant. It's kind of in the water. It's kind of in the air, and it's subtle. And when you say something about it, they tell you you're wrong. They tell you you're mistaken. They tell you that you don't see things correctly. They tell you you're inaccurate. So what are they doing? They're gaslighting you. They are trying to define your relationship for you. They'll tell you what you think, feel, need, want, prefer, remember. And they insist that they are right and you're wrong. And this kind of subtle gaslighting, once you see it, it's not so subtle, but you might second guess yourself while you're being fed this kind of thing. And it's important to recognize that. Now, why am I doing this topic tonight? Well, every now and again, it's really important to talk about the basic things because new people come to listen, and they may be starting in this very week, and they may not understand fully what this is. So this is why I've diverted it tonight to say, how do you feel when you're in a toxic relationship? What does toxicity feel like? Well, poisonous, pervasive, invasive, unpleasant, and subtle. Like, am I right? Is that really going on? Or am I making it up? That's what keeps you living on the edge and hypervigilant. And that is extremely unpleasant to go back to that. But the other thing that it is it's harmful. It's hurting your self-esteem. It's hurting your image of yourself, your self-image. It is eroding your self-confidence, which is really sad. And as you try to compromise, you try to be understanding, you try to be equitable yourself in the relationship, and you soon realize that there is not that willingness on the other side. It hurts. It is harmful. It makes you feel, what have I done? Am I trapped in a relationship that is totally dysfunctional? And what do I need to think about? What do I need to do? What models are my children seeing by watching this interaction? So many big questions when you start to ask yourself, am I with a toxic person, a hijackal? Very, very important. Now, the last one that I want to talk to you about tonight is they are crafty. And when I looked up the meaning of crafty, because I just got curious, what does it mean? I was thinking about, people who figure things out and try to go under the radar, kind of crafty. But I found that the actual definition of crafty is clever about achieving one's aims by indirect and deceitful methods. Clever about achieving one's aims by indirect and deceitful measures and methods. Hijackals are crafty. They're deceitful. They are indirect. They redirect you. They do sleight of hand kinds of things. They blame you for things they did. The things that they're most afraid are true of them, they tell you are true of you. That's what we call projection. That's crafty. That's indirect. That's deceitful. That's underhanded. It's undermining. It's blindsiding. All of these things are true. And if this is how you feel when you're in a relationship, then it is highly likely that you are in a relationship with a toxic person, a hijackal. And I really encourage you to go to toxicrelationshipchecklists.com if this is ringing true for you, because you want to find out. You need to nail it down. If you don't start seeing the other person and their behaviors for what they are, you may blame yourself. You may take on fault that isn't yours. You may put yourself down. You may discredit yourself. You may second guess yourself. You may question your sanity. And of course, the podcast is called Save Your Sanity. So if you're questioning it, I want you to save your sanity. And I want to give you tools to understand what it is to be in a toxic relationship with a hijackal and how to recognize that. There are 40 questions in the toxic checklist. Am I with a toxic partner? Those 40 things will give you big insights, big moments of going, oh, I hadn't thought of that part. Whoa, who knew? And these are important things for you to connect with and understand. There's nothing bad in you that attracted a toxic person. They like good people. They like people who will go the extra mile, who will give them some wiggle room, who will give them the benefit of the doubt. They like people like that because they think that they can manipulate them easier. So it's not that there's anything wrong with you. It is that they saw their moment and they started to groom you by being everything you wanted them to be in the case of a romantic relationship. But in the case of a toxic parent, you didn't have any choice. You were born into that. And it's equally important to understand that if you had a toxic parent, you need to understand the toxic relationships there, because long before you even had language, you were learning and taking in your sense of self by how the hijackal treated you and what they demanded of you. And it changes everything. You know, when I'm working with my clients, we look always at what happened. What happened underneath your adult life? What were you told before the age of 7? Because that's when brain development really has made quite a few inroads. For the beginning of our life, we have a lot of areas of our brain that are not fully developed. And so the things that go in when we're young about who we are, about how the world works, about what we're worth, about whether we're important, all of those things could have been put in there by a toxic parent. And if they're already in there, a toxic partner is going to hop along and say, this one's already groomed. I can just play that music again. It's not your fault. It happens. It's organic. But when you wake up and smell the herbal tea, you take this toxic relationship checklists.com to heart, and you go over there and see there's a passive aggressive checklist, there's a relationship checklist, you'll see them all over there. And you start to say, oh, I never thought about those as components of what's going on. Then you can begin to come back to your center. You can take up more space. You can say no, and you can start thinking about establishing some healthy boundaries. Now, these are all super important things to do. And I hope that you will take them very seriously and look at them And don't spend too many moments saying, oh, the time I've wasted, if you find that you're in a toxic relationship with a hijackal. Don't think about it that way. Think of, how do I get myself back to center? How do I get myself empowered? I'm always here to help you do that. You know that you can use my introductory offer for new clients, and go to beaclient.com, a full hour with me for only $97. You can do that if you want to talk about it, see what's possible, figure out, am I really with a hijackal? That's an important thing to do. And as I said, beaclient.com. Quick, easy. It takes you right to my calendar. Easy to do. So I hope this has been helpful to you to think about in a different way. How do you feel in a relationship that is toxic, in a relationship with a toxic person with a hijackal? Very important. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and until we talk again, I hope you'll take very good care of yourself, because you are precious and you matter, and I hope that you demonstrate that to yourself every day. Until we talk again, take good care. All right, let's see who's in the room and what's going on here in the chat. Oh, okay. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. I haven't seen you here before. You say your person hides objects to confuse you, whispers things, and then denies. Is that sociopathic behavior? Well, I don't know about sociopathic, because that is indeed a clinical mental health definition, but it definitely is hijackal behavior. You know, that, let's just take these things apart. They, as you say, they hide objects. That's gaslighting. That is wanting you to second guess your sanity, second guess yourself, question your sanity. And that is so sad, but they do that. And they do it on purpose to have power and control. So one of the things that I suggest to people who have people who are gaslighting them by hiding things is anything that's really important to you, like keys and everything, have a second set where you always know where they are. So you don't give them the satisfaction of being upset or being in a hurry or being at their disposal or needing them to solve the problem, because that's why they did it. They want you to be tormented and they want you to need them to solve the problem. So they create the horrible anxiety, and then they want to swoop in like a superhero and save you from it so they can be your hero. And that's very confusing emotionally. And then you said that he whispers things and then denies. Oh, that is such a big hijackal thing to do. Like, well, you misheard. I didn't really say that. And oh, what's wrong with you to even think I would say that? Now all of a sudden, everything is your fault. And they started it, has nothing to do with you, right? So notice how very much that is a hijackal behavior. And that whole denial, you know, they may do or say something very overtly on one day. And when you say to them, well, you know, you said this yesterday, and they'll say, no, I didn't say that. What's wrong with you? You don't listen very well, do you? Now, all of a sudden, aside from gaslighting, it has you going, I know, I heard that. I feel so impotent because this person will not admit the truth of what they said. Even if you have them on a recording, they will say that it doesn't matter. That's wrong. Right in the face of a recording, they will deny it. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Michelle. That's what happens. And Anne, you said thank you. I generally am glad that you're thankful for what you received today. But if there was something particular that stood out, I'd love to hear that. Now, I always tell people at this point, there's a 20-second delay between when you put the comment or question in and when I see it. So if you have something to say or you're thinking about asking a question, do it now so that I can see it all and make sure that we don't miss you. So Ekaterina says, what about adult children of alcoholics? Sometimes they're dependent on your friendship and become hijackals. Well, adult children of alcoholics can be very codependent. There's a lot written about that. Codependence meaning that I let other people define me. I let other people's opinion of me define me. I depend on other people for my self-worth, that kind of thing. And when you're in relationship with an adult child of alcoholics, um, they may or may not be hijackals, but they will be difficult. And they may be difficult in a very subtle way. They may be difficult in a very passive way. And that can be as annoying as somebody being overt and demanding. I know these things get very, very convoluted after a while. And many times, people who are um, adult children of alcoholics, ACOA, they will be very confused about their self-worth because they believe they've been raised in homes where they didn't matter as much, and they don't believe that they matter. And that's a big question. So it's a good thing to raise. So when we're looking at toxic relationships, we've talked about what is it? Well, it's poisonous, pervasive, invasive. It's like weeds in the garden. And after a while, the weeds take over and there's no blossoms. There's nothing to look forward to. Nothing's going to bloom because it's all been taken over by the weeds. And if you feel that way, if your relationship has become overshadowed by the weeds, maybe you've become hyper vigilant where you're always looking over your shoulder. How's that person going to behave? What's up? Am I safe? And you're living in anxiety. That's another big sign that you would be in a toxic relationship. And that's not healthy at all. And Annie says, oh, you're welcome, Katerina. Annie says, can you speak about trauma bonding? Yes. Trauma bonding is what makes it so we don't feel that we are competent to leave. And it's also what, if we do get up the gumption to leave, brings us back. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was the wrong one. Maybe I was the hijackal. Oh, what have I done? What have I done? And you go back, because trauma bonding happens when a person is really nice to you, and then they're really bad to you, and then all of a sudden they're nice to you, and they become the hero of the story. Like, you forget that they were the one who hurt you because now they're comforting you. And so you get trauma bonded to them because they hurt you, and then they pull you in. They'll go away, go away, go away. And then you're crying and you're upset and all of that. And they go, oh, come here, come here. And the trauma bonding is that they have the ability to push you away and pull you closer. And so they create trauma within you. And that bond is there, and you don't even notice it, that they are the person who hurts you and they are the person who comforts you. They are the person who creates the bad situation, and then they want to be the one who fixes it. And they want to fix it in their own way, not your way. So it's very important to understand trauma bonding, because that will keep you hooked. It'll keep you hooked on hope that the person that you first met and fell in love with is a real person. That person does not exist. That person was made up for the purposes of the gotcha. In my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, I have a whole chapter called The Gotcha Factor. And the gotcha factor is being exactly who you want them to be for the shortest period of time possible in order to either get you to move in, marry them, or have children with them. Gotcha. Now I can behave any old way I want. I don't have to be nice to you anymore. I don't have to care what you think. I gotcha. And so it's very important. Anne says, I am stuck in anger. Well, let me help you get unstuck. Use that link, beaclient.com. Let's talk. Being stuck in anger is too hard on your body. It's too hard on your system. It's too hard on your life. It's too hard on your children. And it really won't help. Get in touch with the anger and let that fuel you to action. But don't stay in the anger, because it can even cause you to have autoimmune situations in your body. It can inflame things in your body. The emotional connection to what goes on in your physical body is high. And so if you're stuck in anger, let's solve that problem. Let's find a way to get you to know what you're angry about, but you're not feeling the anger. You're not living in anger arousal. Because, I don't know if you've ever read the works, they're fun, of Ashley Brilliant, but he says, when Speak in anger and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret. Let that sink in for a minute, right? Speak in anger and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret. But speak in anger and make the best speech you'll ever regret to a hijackal. They are going to take that, they're going to turn it, they're going to use it against you forever. So you don't want to be in that place, because when you're in anger arousal, your thought processes are diminished because your body is trying to keep alive. Your body goes into fight or flight, and it takes blood from other parts of the body to keep the heart and lungs alive, and it takes blood from your head. Therefore, you're not thinking so well. So let's get you out of being stuck in anger, and so that you have your full faculties. You know what to do with the anger when it arises. You know how to set good boundaries. You know what to do when your boundaries are broken. And setting boundaries with a hijackal is different than setting boundaries with your best friend. Hijackals hate boundaries, so that's a whole other thing. I've talked about that before, but if you want specific information to your relationship, go to beaclient.com. We'll talk about it, because this stuff is insidious. You know, I love that word, insidious. It means invasive, and it's sort of proceeding in a gradual way with harmful effects. It's just constantly invading and being poisonous and killing things, and it'll certainly kill your feelings for the other person, but it'll dampen and destroy your feelings of self-worth. And nobody should be allowed to take that away from you, and don't hand it to them on a platter. So if you wake up and realize that you care more about what that hijackal thinks of you than you care what you think of you, that's a good beginning point to say, no, that is not going to happen a moment longer. Not going to happen a moment longer. What I think of me, I want to clarify. You know, many times people say to me, well, should I just leave? And I say, I don't know. Every situation is different. But I will say this, and I've said it on so many podcasts and YouTube videos: if there isn't sexual or physical abuse going on, in both those cases, you should report to the police and get a restraining order. But if there isn't those two things, let's work together to get you back to an empowered place, a clear place. Try some strategies, try some tactics, see what works, get new skills in your vocabulary, know how to have healthier relationships, understand where you've kind of gone down some dark paths, being led there by a hijackal, come back out of those rabbit holes. Let's become empowered and clear so that you can make the best decision possible. Also, if you are going to decide to leave the hijackal, I want to help you figure out everything, figure out the money, figure out the property, figure out the child, figure out the support, figure out the custody, do all of those things, know how to engage the proper attorney. You especially need a special kind of attorney if you're going to court with a hijackal. You know, all of these things that I've done programs on, so important. I have a new series, and it'll come out in about 6 weeks. I've done 5 videos with an attorney who is a child custody specialist, and that's going to be a little package that you'll be able to watch to help you understand what to do when you're dealing with child custody. I also have I had someone on the program, Jason Levoy, just a couple weeks ago. He was a divorce attorney. Now he's a divorce coach, and we talked about how to choose an attorney. That's very important. All of these pieces are there. I have a product on forrelationshiphelp.com. You just click on this store, and there's a product there on how to choose a therapist. And that's a great conversation that I had with my friend Kristen Walker, who is the head of the Mental Health News Radio Network. My show, Save Your Sanity, is on that network, and I'm so grateful for that. But she and I had a conversation about how to choose a therapist. And so these things are really important. It's really important to get support and help. You can't know all of these things, and you particularly can't know them or know how to enact them or think straight about them when you've been downtrodden and blindsided and undermined by a hijackal. And the longer that's happened to you, the more disempowering it is. So we need to work to build you back up so that you can make good decisions, that you can think differently about it. You can clear your head. You can understand what you need to think about, what you need to compare and contrast, what you need to consider to make a decision. All of these components. I've been there, I've done that. I was raised by two hijackal parents, and I have the fortune of being an only child. The only good thing about that is no other children were harmed in the process. But, there I was with two hijackals. So, of course, I married one. And then I divorced one. I co-parented one, and I attracted a whole lot others. And when I got my PhD, I made it my mission to figure all this out for myself and then to help other people do it, because I've been there, done that. I have the nasty video and the ragged t-shirt. Believe me, I do. I have walked through it all, and I have walked through it with clients for 25 years. So I know about these things. I have mediated divorces in California. I understand all that. I'm a professional mediator. I can help you when you go to mediation. All of those things are important. And I've made it my life work to help you out of this situation. So please just hop over to beaclient.com and let's talk, because you can't go and gather all this information. You can watch on the internet and gather some good information, but after a certain time, it has to be applicable to your situation in your life. And it has to be something that will work for you. And you know what your best next steps are, not with the person down the road or the person in another country, but yours in your situation, with your children, with your age of your children, with your age, with your pension, with your work, with your house, with your belongings. All of those things need to be specific and special just for you. So I see there aren't any more questions. I'm so glad that you joined me tonight. I'm here most Monday evenings at 7 o'clock. And when you subscribe, which you can do, of course, just go to my page on Facebook. It's facebook.com/relationshiphelpdoctor. Like the page, and then you'll get a notification about each Monday night's topic a few hours before it happens. And then if it's pertinent to you, you can come on the call. And that's a good way to get new information and take care of you. And you are very welcome. I'm glad that you're going to do that, and you're very welcome for the information. So let's talk again soon, and I will look forward to that. In the meantime, take very good care of yourself. Good night.